There are multiple reasons why the cabal are so successful in shaping all of us. They surely know how to divide and conquer, also to rule from the shadows. And we are all under the misconception that our governments want to help us. What if the reverse is true, and we are deliberately being led astray? If our governments are out to destroy us, it just might be the truth that each and every law and pronouncement is designed to debilitate us. There are some who say sexual liberation was from its inception a form of control. Whoever can offer the magic drug to the masses that keeps the pain of their broken link to the divine at bay will rule. Aldous Huxley wrote in his preface to the 1946 edition of Brave New World that as political and economic freedom diminishes, sexual freedom tends compensatingly to increase. Permit me to discuss women's rights. It's crazy that it should be a man's business to discuss it, consider it, or even talk about it. But women indeed rule men, drive them crazy, and make a man complete. Women also appear to be better at multitasking and being holistic. The women's rights movement is said to have originated with the communist Russian Revolution, which is said to have been orchestrated by Jews. The West has certainly taken women's rights on board. First of all, what does it mean, women's rights? Women shall have the same rights as a man, I guess. But men and women are different. Also, men lust after women, and this lust can cloud a man's judgment. It is said in Islamic circles that women can be distracted by dazzle, and men by hubris. In this so-called quest for human rights, both sexes are viewed as the same. Indeed, those fighting for human rights are often included in fighting for women's rights and homosexual rights. And all our wars of humanitarian intervention that have killed hundreds of thousands are justified with human rights. At first it only seems fair that women should have the same right to a career as men. Yet Islam actually distinguishes what careers are permitted for each gender. A man cannot sell ladies' underwear, and a woman cannot be fitting shoes on men's feet. Of course, there is more detail to this, but the fact remains there are limitations according to gender. Similarly, in Islam, a woman should not dress like a man, and vice versa, which is also why we observe Muslim men unshaven. A man is a man and a woman is a woman, feminine. There may well be a wisdom to this. In Britain there is no such concerns for what profession is for what sex. In fact, if one looks at Boy Scout leaders, physical education teachers, and refuges for the vulnerable, one will most often discover a majority of the personnel are openly homosexual. They are enjoying their human rights which are enshrined in law. And these people, that are at the weaker end of society, are exposed to an early conditioning and likely predatory behaviors. And please realize the drunks in the street cherish their human rights to do as they do. When the Americans assaulted Afghanistan, after the initial killing of thousands of Taliban and Afghanis, as soon as possible they instituted a female presenter on TV. The point here is not to discuss the morality or ethics of a female presenter, but to show that this is part of the political agenda. It was clearly a move designed to affront the Afghani culture. The cry for women's rights in Afghanistan has been voiced by the Western powers for years, of course ignoring the devastation caused to so many Afghani women and their families, all too often from high-altitude bombing. The British, in fact, have been using vacuum bombs, commonly known as the poor man's atomic bomb. But with half of all Afghanis now refugees, there are a new breed of Afghani women who have been raised in the West. And they can be seen in Western peace camps, and they cry for the atrocities of the occupiers. Yet they often seem to be wearing miniskirts. The Jewish oligarchy, or if you prefer, the Zionists, who have taken control of the West, have a few objectives to be achieved through military might, and so-called women's rights is one of them, along with assimilation, gay rights, fiat money, destruction of tribes and clans, and free mixing. The best-selling newspapers in Britain all show a topless woman on the third page, every single day. You may believe this helps them sell newspapers. This is in no way for certain. It is just as plausible that it is indoctrination. There is an established theory that the so-called sexual liberation actually allows for increased political control. Libido dominandi. This book explains how the rhetoric of sexual freedom was used to engineer a system of covert political and social control. In fact, the Great Sexual Liberation Revolution occurred at the same time as the mass protests against the Vietnam War. It is very likely this was an orchestrated program. If we look at the Jewish elite, we will see an extreme monogamy at work with no adultery whatsoever. Yet for the sheeple, quite the reverse is encouraged. And the only difference between the elite and the sheeple is mental programming. Indoctrination. Unless you believe the baloney about the brains and morality are in the genes. We are all familiar with the role of women in advertising. In fact, Islam forbids the depiction of humans in advertising. But here in the West, it is extremely common. And these sex symbols are used to promote all manner of goods. Islam has a prudish view, and therefore women have their hair covered in public. In Judaism, married women cover their hair. I was intrigued to hear the theory that our hair actually symbolizes our fertility. Anyway, what seems to be at work is the creation of an androgynous human, where women can act as men and cut their hair short. We are at war with tradition. We are in a Cartesian moment. Anyone can strive to be whoever they mentally want to be. This may sound like freedom, but in fact it is on the proviso of no attachments. And so a career path can be chosen, but in fact the managers of society work in reverse. They are not pursuing careers, they are managing people, and doing that through what little attachments and relationships the people have. So we have a two-tier society. The rulers are monogamous, and the ruled are sexually liberated. It is impossible to separate pornography from women's rights. They are both being pushed from the same sources. With 1 in 3 marriages collapsing in our major Western cities, we are witnessing the end of the family. There is an indisputable fact that women are most often physically weaker than men. Not all jobs are interchangeable. We should cherish our differences rather than trying to be the same.
Many of the biggest celebrities have no talent at all. This very famous woman is called Miss Katie Price. Her brand name is Jordan. And despite my research, it seems clear that she doesn't actually do anything.
Love it.